Okay, so chapter 5 is about to release, and I barely have any time left to, fucking do everything to make a proper video, so I have a theory. And I'm going to try to speedrun it, because I need to get this out today, because Deltarune tomorrow, or technically maybe in the time zone, maybe Deltarune today. Fuck it. I don't care. So, I call this theory stage play theory. Hold on. The roles of the prophecy are interchangeable, and I'm pretty sure Deltarune's quote-quote overarching story is about how that affects things in Hometown. Or rather, how all of that got like, all of this started. Anyway, I'll go over a couple of things first, a couple of assumptions that I have about the story of Deltarune, and afterwards I get to the real meat and stuff. These are theories that have already been, presented to the wider community and stuff. I'm probably not the person to talk about these theories in length, but I'll try my best. Death Knight, obviously. Vessel's meant to be, the original purpose of the vessel was meant to be the cage with human stolen parts. I believe that Gaster was actually meaning to use the vessel to make the prophecy happen instead of spending an already pre-existing human life to do it. That's a whole other thing. I'm not gonna get into it. I'm just working off of that, considering the fact that Gaster got the fuck interrupted in the intro. The girl with Hope Cross on her heart is originally meant to be Noelle. I believe this. However, I need to say, originally, this is no longer the case unless you but we'll get into that. And lastly, the prophecy will happen, but the exacts depend. A lot of media about prophecies plays around with the wording of it a lot. Like, a good example of this is the whole part in chapter 4 where the prophecy is all like, the girl finds love. And as we all know, because we've all played Undertale, I'm guessing, love can mean something else, So, that being said, I am approaching this more from a narrative perspective rather than a whole theory, crafting it all and putting pieces together like... I'm just gonna present this as it is. I don't know if all of this is completely, proper in terms of everything. Maybe I get a detail wrong. Point is, you're supposed to think about this in broad strokes, not like, oh, you misinterpreted one thing, theory invalidated. I don't play with wording. I just have an idea of what I believe a part of the story is. So, where do we start? Well, I actually have a document on this somewhere. I'm gonna need to grab that. And I've got it right here. You can't see it, VR stuff. Don't worry about it. Anyway, so the main points that I'm trying to make are, 1, the roles of the prophecy are interchangeable, and 2, Carol wants to replace Noelle with Susie as the hero of the prophecy. Why do you think that? Let me begin the story. It starts with Des. Something bad happens to Des. She disappears somewhere, maybe the bunker. Something happens to her and she becomes the Knight. Carol finds out about the prophecy, and comes to the conclusion that the girl with Hope Cross on her heart might be Noelle. Being maybe not the best mother, but at least one that does have at least, like, some semblance of wanting what's quote-unquote good for Noelle. Doesn't want anything bad to happen to her remaining daughter. The disappearance is pretty fucking big, of course. Asgore gets way into it, like, way into it. He fails to solve it, and takes leave or gets the fuck fired from the police force. That eventually leads to the divorce with Toriel, as we all know. Des and Chris were at some point acquainted. Maybe even close. She came over to watch TV and stuff away from home. Her disappearance affects Chris negatively in some way. This will lead into something else later. Well, soon, actually. Actually, probably the following sentence. Carol comes up with the conspiracy and gets Chris involved, and maybe Asgore at, like, an arm's length. Chris promised, well, here, Carol probably happens on Carol's terms. Chris promises to, that they do anything to help keep Noelle safe, as I assume that they're probably also, like, maybe there's some stuff going on there. I know that Noelle and Chris weren't exactly the closest, but there's a number of reasons why Chris would want to help with the prophecy. I would assume helping keep Noelle safe, maybe helping get Des back in some way. I don't know the exacts. Let's move on. And Chris gets roped into getting strung up. Or maybe having, or basically just getting the human soul, or having Chris's own human soul replaced or otherwise controlled by the player. Basically, Chris becomes, the cage, the puppet, all of that. The plan is to recreate what happens in the prophecy, fulfilling it, but having Susie, who at that time was a girl without friends or connections, having her replace what would have otherwise been Noelle's place in the story. Recreating the prophecy is why the knight acts so weird, wanting to nab Toriel instead of just cleaving Tenna and immediately stealing her, because I'm pretty sure the knight would have been able to do that, possibly stealing Toriel's leverage for Asgore or whatever, and then choosing to take Undyne instead. They could have made the second dark fountain in the sanctuary immediately, but instead they choose to aura farm. Not without reason, of course. They needed to wait for the heroes before they could spawn a Titan, so the hero could take it out and gain a bit of an ego of like, holy fucking shit, we killed a Titan. Giving Gerson a Shadow Crystal might have been an attempt to influence what's going on to act in their interest, but he ended up helping the heroes anyway, so yeah. The heroes need to believe that they can take on the Roaring, because they will, and they'll be victorious, but not without cost. Susie will die. But after that, everything, hopefully, goes back to normal. Maybe just someone gets brought back by beating back the dark. Carol might hope. And then everyone can act like a normal family or whatever, as if they didn't just sacrifice Susie to the dark. That's the basics. At least that's what I think. I'm not going to think about like the exacts of why I think that. It's, again, I don't have time, but I will go over how this affects the weird route, because I believe that the weird route will be Chris grooming Noelle for the original role of girl with hope crossed on her heart. This is why Chris is so fucking angry every time you do something related to the weird route. Why Chris intentionally tries to, sabotage, giving Noelle her watch and stuff, and, the whole thing with the thorn ring and stuff. Because that means that the soul is working against their goal. Carol's not entirely sure what the fuck is happening, so she's just kind of confused. While Soul is, the Soul is kind of doing their part. Well, at least she thinks it is. Well, What it means for Gasher, though, not really all that much. He just wanted to make the vessel his own vessel for the prophecy, and he's denied of that. He's not happy, but regardless, the prophecy will happen. And while the loss of a pre-existing human life is a tragedy, it's not like he could have done anything about it, so he just sit back and watch what happens. Well, Chris and the others, fuck around and find out. This is pretty much like everything I want to. Pretty much like my whole idea for how Deltarune goes, or well, not like completely. I'm pretty sure that this won't be exactly how the story goes. After all, Deltarune isn't exactly it's a game that is predictable. It wants to break things. Most people didn't think that we got to see the knight until chapter 6, but of fucking course the knight will be in chapter 3 because, you know, that's how you make a good villain. Well, I'm not gonna get into that whole thing. I don't think Deltarune is going to end with, like, a bleak message of, you can't do anything to prophecy. One of the things mentioned in chapter 4 is that Susie literally has well, not literally, but allegorically has the white pen of hope, which rides over the inky blackness of what is already written before it, and you know, and in some ways, I would assume that Susie is maybe going to do something that'll make the original ending not happen as was planned by the prophecy. But that's another can of worms. I need to go out of this video. Bye-bye.